Today we're returning to a familiar territory. We've covered a brilliant and formidable predator that seems to be unstoppable because of its powerful punch. But there's at least one item on its menu that's not going into the ring unprepared. But when you're going up against the title Tyson, you're probably not going to win a slugfest. Instead, this clever clam turns to a brilliant tactic to outsmart the killer crustacean. But sometimes, it pays to be bright in life, death, and taxonomy. Welcome back to Life, Death, and Taxonomy. It's your 30 minutes of interesting animal information. I'm Joe.
And mi chiamo Carlos.
Mi chiamo?
Yeah, I said it because it's Italian for my name is Carlos.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just came back from a tour of Italy.
You went to Olive Garden and had a tour of Italy?
There was lasagna, there was chicken parmesan, there was fettuccine alfredo. It was amazing. It was only like $12.99.
That's right. On Tuesday morning, when you were looking for your episode, Carlos was eating lasagna, and then that's what was happening.
I apologize for the lateness of this episode, but it was worth it because I got to spend 6 straight hours as a double-ended hose after drinking some bad water in Venice on the flight back. So
really? Wait, on the flight back?
The flight back. I mean,
this is the second time this has happened to you, right? Like,
it has. Yeah, this happened in Peru. Yeah, so the water in Venice was just so nasty. And we closed the bathroom door to the hotel because it smelled like open sewage. So we obviously didn't drink any of it, but I did brush my teeth with the sink water, which didn't smell bad, but it might have had the same problem. So just 3:45 in the morning, we wake up to hit a 7 o'clock flight, and we get on the bus to the airport, and I just start the process.
Oh my gosh.
And then we all through while we were waiting for the flight to take off, and then all through the flight I was just glued to the bathroom seat to the point where we landed with me sitting on the toilet.
Really?
In the plane, they wouldn't let me get out because it was too dangerous. You know, when it's too tumultuous when you're landing. So I was. They just locked me in the bathroom. They wouldn't let me come out.
That's funny because you don't have a seatbelt. You're in danger in there as much as you would be walking to your seat, I would imagine.
No, I can't. As long as I'm sitting,
I guess
I'm not in as much danger because nothing can fall on me. I can't fall on anyone.
I guess
there was danger of like serious turbulence sending me into the ceiling. I guess, which was probably why they banged on the door to tell me to get out several times. But my bowels were in no position to comply with their orders. That was the worst. It might be the worst 6 hours of my life.
I can't imagine.
Definitely the worst flight.
When your stomach hurts and like that kind of stuff is happening and people are banging on the door, it's like you rue the day you were born.
Yeah, and they were yelling at me in Spanish, and so I'm also having to like do in like brain translations. And
what airline was it?
It was Iberia. It's a Spanish airline that goes to the Iberian and from the Iberian Peninsula. So that's what we took.
Anyway,
that was my yesterday.
And you thought you were like upset because you didn't have the episode, and Carlos was pooping on a plane. And today we're returning to an old friend, but we're going to hear the other side of the story. More on that later.
Who's our old friend? Oh, yes. And now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we're talking. Speaking of what we're talking about, would you like to say what we're talking about?
Yeah, I want to talk about it. It's called, and this is just one nickname. I have a whole slew of nicknames that I didn't even make up. There was just what people have given them. But we're gonna call it the Disco Clam for now, which is of its nicknames. Not so illustrious.
That's crazy. It's pretty illustrious.
But let me illuminate the other ones.
Okay.
And oh man, these are so good. So these are all given by people because this clam is bought and sold in the exotic animal trade.
Yes, we have
So people...
them to thank for the measurements I've found.
Yeah, there's not a lot of research done on these, despite the fact that they're pets, but people do like to name them if they don't like to study them. Here's some nicknames. The Electric Flame Scallop.
Love it. Sounds like a D&D move.
It sounds like a band from the 70s with chart-topping hits like Mr. Blue Sea and Don't Make Me Drown.
Okay.
Don't make me drown.
Woo-hoo.
It's also known as the Electric Fire Clam, the Lightning File Shell, the Flamboyant Bivalve, and the Electric Eye Flashing Fire Shell.
Oh my gosh.
So good. I'm going to call it, this is one's mine, Friday Night Frights.
Nice.
And here are two from you.
Uh-huh.
You sent me a couple earlier today. Earth, Wind, and Flame Scallop.
Yep.
And Tony Mollusco.
Yeah.
Which I did not know until today is a play off of the name of John Travolta's character in Saturday Night Fever.
I was trying to think of something with just incorporating John Travolta, and I was like, there's really nothing Travolta-y about this clam. And then I was like, he was in that. Let me look at the movie that I've never seen that he was in that had to do with disco. And I just looked up the character name.
And you're like,
I think it's Morano. Tony Morano.
Something like that. I don't know. I'll probably never see that movie unless it's over somebody's shoulder in an airplane.
Yeah. I've seen the important clips of that, I think. Just like
I haven't even done that. It just sounds like a movie that I would not enjoy.
You've probably seen the parody of it in Extremely Goofy Movie.
Oh, that's what that is. Oh, and it's probably also from Airplane.
Maybe, yeah, I would imagine.
We're going to talk a lot more about why this clam has all of those amazing nicknames that include the word fire and flashing and lightning and flamboyant and electric later on. But for now, let's taxonomize this baby.
Sweet.
It's in a kingdom we know, love, and are in. And that kingdom, as always, is Kingdom Animalia. I also saw one nickname that I didn't put on here, but it was King of the Ocean, and I was like, this does not deserve to be called the King of the Ocean.
Yeah.
This is not the lion of the ocean.
Yeah, no, I feel like what could be? Maybe I feel like a killer whale is a good candidate, just the largest ones, maybe like the blue whale. But
I would say the killer whale, just
versus
absolute apex predator.
Yeah. Vote in the comments.
Tiger shark?
Yeah.
I don't know. So it's in a phylum, Mollusca. So we're back to mollusks. We don't do mollusks very often. I think this is our first clam. I think it's also our first bivalve, and which brings me to the class, which is bivalvia or bivalvia. Or
Bavaria.
Bivalvian cream pie.
Yeah.
The order is Limidia. Now that I'm reading it out loud. When I just glanced at it and typed it out, it was like Limida.
Limadia.
Oh, and it's not Limidia. There's only two I's. So it's Limida. So it's really is Limida or Limida.
Okay.
I added the extra I in there because
Freudian slip.
Yeah. The genus is Ctenoides. Ctenoides. So I'm going to ignore the C like we do in the word Cnidarian and just call this Ctenoides. And the species is Ales or Alice or Alice. A-L-E-S. So Ctenoides Alice is the binomial nomenclature for the disco clam. Or, sorry, the electric eye flashing fire shell.
Right, of course. That's what we're going to call it every single time.
Right, no, I'm just gonna call it Tony.
Okay.
Since we're in the business of naming things, it's time for my favorite part of the show, critter groups. There we go. And this is a part of the show where I ask Joe a question. That question is the same every time, and that is, what is the name of a group of this animal, or what is the collective noun for this animal? And don't ask me what the other Renaissance term for it was. Oh, wait. Terms of venery or something like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the collective noun. So Joe, what's the collective noun of the name of a group of clams? Is it A, a crust of clams? Is it B, a bed of clams? Is it C, a field of clams? Or is it D, a crop of clams?
I'm going to go ahead and say B, bed of clams, because I've seen Alice in Wonderland, and there's the little clams in the clam bed.
You're talking about the walrus and the carpenter?
Yes. Clam bed's final answer.
You're correct.
I knew it.
I thought that would be... I instinctively knew that it was bed for some reason.
So did I.
And so I was just looking up to verify.
Oh, no, I absolutely didn't know.
I was like, oh, this is going to be too easy.
I absolutely knew that. I was actually stalling for time because I was trying to look up the exact lyrics, but I just couldn't find it fast enough. I knew it was clam beds.
I was like... sometimes I realize, like, once we already have the animal nailed down, I was like, oh, man, this is going to be a rough critter groups, for me at least, an easy one for you.
But I feel like I do know that because of Alice in Wonderland. It's in my brain.
I would not have gone to that. It's kind of a messed up story to be in a kid's book.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about where where Tony lives. He lives all over the Indo-Pacific part of the ocean, which is a region that goes pretty much from Madagascar almost all the way to South America, well past Hawaii. So all of that area underneath India and Southeast Asia and all through Indonesia and the islands contained therein. It likes tropical waters specifically, which is not unlike myself. So let's talk about what this thing looks like, because that's important. Basically, it looks like a pair of voluptuous and also horrifying red lips. Well, it's actually kind of like a bright orange, reddish, maybe more orange. There are dozens of tentacles coming out of these lips. And the entire kit and caboodle is housed in a regular-looking clamshell. So the clamshell is actually nothing to write home about.
When it's closed, it looks pretty normal.
Yeah, but when it's open and the clam comes out, it's this, like, anemone thing. And it can obviously retreat all the way into the shell if it's threatened. I mean, clams can get pretty big.
But how big
For sure.
are they? You ready?
Some are big, really big.
Welcome to the beloved Measure Up segment, the official listener's favorite part of the show. The part of the show when we present the animal size and dimensions in relatable terms through a quiz that's fun for the whole family. It's also part of the show that's introduced by you when you send in your audio of yourself singing, saying, or chittering the words Measure Up into ldtaxonomy@gmail.com.
Did you have that memorized or did you read it?
I'm reading it.
Okay, because that was really fast.
But it's the same every time, so I'm trying to read it as fast as possible. Reading things quickly without, like, stumbling is not my strong suit. But
it's not mine either. That's why it takes several takes to try to do the intros and outros to these episodes.
Same. But we do have a new Measure Up intro from, I think, Abby and Joel. You know who these people are? Would you like to introduce them?
I certainly do. They are my sister and brother-in-law, respectively.
Amazing.
And
Sweet.
They were also seated around the table when I handed them Bibby's phone and asked them to say Measure Up.
What a treasure trove this table was.
Yeah, it was. They were our knights of the round table. And the table wasn't even round. It was oblong. Maybe like a large oval with flanges on the side.
This is I think the last of this blessing upon our podcast that came from that table. So if you would like to submit, send us an email. Without further ado, the listener's favorite part of the show.
Measure up.
Oh, I forgot to mention that Bibby is also in this one.
Yeah, she was the person who said up at the very end.
Okay, always a welcome addition. But thank you. That was.
Yep. Thanks, you guys.
Boisterous, as we like to say sometimes in the show. Let's get right into length. According to exotic aquarium websites that I found the dimensions on, they're between 1 inch and 2.5 inches. Let's call that 2 inches. How many disco clams go into the diameter of the world's largest disco ball?
I bet you it's in Shanghai.
According to the Guinness World Records. Here's a hint. The ball was created for the 4-day UK music festival called Bestival in 2014. Isn't that a good name for This is the best.
That sounds like someone who is just high as a kite would come up with. This is the Bestival.
It also just sounds like something that you would say as a joke, and then everyone would be like, why not? Let's just call it that.
It sounds like something someone should have come up with 1,000 years ago.
I think it started in the 90s.
Basically the same thing. I wonder if it's bigger than the ball that drops on New Year's Eve. Probably not.
If the Epcot ball was just more reflective, it could have been a contender.
What qualifies it as a disco ball?
I think maybe it has to be reflective, like mirrored, and also maybe it has to spin, or maybe not. I'm not sure about the spinning thing.
Does it have to be supported on a string? Because the Epcot
I don't think
balls
so.
could certainly not be supported on a string.
The pictures of this one look like it was on the ground. I would guess it just has to be a round ball with many, many mirrored sides that are able to reflect light in a fun way.
I'm going to say 30 feet. Although you said the Epcot ball could be a contender, and that thing is enormous.
Well, a contender can win, and a contender can also lose.
Yeah, but I mean, you just don't refer to things as contenders that are absolutely going to dominate the competition.
What? Well, I called it a contender so that you wouldn't know exactly how big the thing was.
But, all right, 30 feet, and this thing's 2 inches, so that means that there are 6 of them in a foot, and 6 times 30 is 180.
Final answer?
Yeah, that's it. That's my final answer.
The correct answer is 203 clams. So
That is
it's pretty close because the ball was 10.33 meters or 33 feet and 10 inches.
Oh, that was a really close guess.
Yeah.
Did I get my math right?
I think so because, you would add adding a few feet when the thing is only 2 inches would considerably raise the amount of clams needed. Yeah, you definitely did.
Yeah, I was right. I did.
Alrighty.
All right, bring it on.
Not bad at all. Let's talk about lifespan.
I know my disco.
The disco clam lives between 27 and 30 years in captivity. Let's call it 30 years. How many disco clam lifespans go into the amount of time between now and the first #1 song on the American disco charts, according to Billboard, the Billboard magazine? Here's a hint. The first ever #1 disco song was Gloria Gaynor's Never Say Goodbye. And it's a bop. It's not bad. I like it a lot.
It's a bop.
Yeah, it's something the kids are saying.
Oh, it's not something that they said back then?
No, well, maybe. Sometimes stuff like that resurges.
It's a bop.
So you're not looking for a number with a decimal. Not.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking for a number with a decimal because it can't possibly be 2. It has to be 1 point something.
Yeah.
Because
disco's 200 years old.
No, if it was 2, then it'd be 60 years, and that would put us back to, put us back to 1960, which is definitely pre-disco. And then if it was just 1, that would put us back to 1990. So we're going to have to go with, I'm going to go just before the beginning of the decade, 1969. But I'm going to have to, that's too precise of a decimal for me to even guess at, so we'll go with 1970. 1.65.
Okie doke. The correct answer is 1.53 disco clams. Disco clam lifespans. The song made the charts in 1974.
That's the first to top the charts.
Yeah,
for some reason I was thinking about the first disco song ever.
See, I tried to find that, and it's highly debated.
Of course it is.
The Billboard didn't measure disco songs on its own chart until 1974. So this was the first time they even had this chart.
Got it.
Okie doke.
Now we know more about disco.
Yeah.
And a little bit more about the electric eye flashing fire shell clam.
The roots of disco are hard to pinpoint because it's rooted in like music that came from discotheques, but discotheques when they first started were playing stuff like Led Zeppelin, so like everyone's like, well, it can't be like that kind of music because that's not disco at all. And then it's just like, it's so fluid as genres tend to be.
Yeah, you're talking about music genres, and there is no way to pinpoint them on a molecular scale like that.
Okay, that's
all right.
all
Let's
I got.
talk about some fast facts.
Okay, go for it.
So, since this is the first bivalve we've done on this show, let's talk a little bit about clams. Bivalves are mollusks that have laterally compressed bodies, meaning they have two bodies that are smushed together, and they're all wrapped up snug and tight in a shell. And that shell is made up of two sides, also known as valves, bivalve, two valves. And those valves are made up of calcium carbonate and are connected by a hinge that's held together by interlocking teeth and flexible ligament running between them. So that allows them to open and close, but also for the two halves not to float apart. And so bivalves include oysters, scallops, mussels, and, you guessed it, clams. They don't have heads or brains, but they do have these in particular, not all clams. But Tony has 40 simple eyes to detect light and shadows, so they know where something is generally. And they also have that certain sulfuric touch that I think is lacking in today's modern bivalve. Always too afraid to offend, never brave enough to douse their enemies in acid. It's sad, really. But seriously, they got footage of the venerable heavyweight mantis shrimp trying to make an easy meal out of Tony, and that's saying something, because remember that if you go back to our original episode on the mantis shrimp, it has a punching force of a .22 caliber bullet. So the shell is not going to be doing much work, but the mantis shrimp pulled back in pain and disgust when it touched Tony's toxic feelers. So don't mess with the best. Sulfuric acid is not something to be messed with. Also, Tony, like other members of the order Limidae, he is able to swim using I imagine he's able to swim, actually, because I couldn't find very much information on Tony at all that didn't have to do with a major fact. But he is in the order of Limidae, which means that he is likely able to swim using a combination of flapping his shell and using his tentacle feelers to move around. But he usually spends most of his time nestled in a rock cranny or nook, or whichever you like, because, like almost all clams, Tony does not use his fierce weaponry to catch prey. He's a leaf eater. More specifically, he's a phytoplankton eater. So he just kind of sits there in this cranny or nook, and he filters the phytoplankton through his weird orange clown lips, and just enjoys just what comes adrift in his way. And that's all I got. That's it for the general info.
Okie doke. Well, let's get into it. The major fact: disco fever. One of the disco clam's main predators is the infamous mantis shrimp, like you mentioned. The first defense for a clam is usually to close up tight and wait for predators to pass. It's usually enough for most predators, but the mantis shrimp has a powerful punch, like you mentioned, and then we talked about before. Go listen to that episode. And it can break through the clam's calcium carbonate defenses. However, when the mantis shrimp approaches this disco clam, it breaks the first rule of being a clam, which is to stay closed. It opens up, and then the disco clam gets its name for its ability to produce a bright, flashing display along the edge of its mantle. The mantle is inside the shell. When the mantis shrimp approaches, the clam opens up and begins its brilliant display. The mantis shrimp have been observed stopping their attacks and going into a catatonic state for up to 15 minutes upon seeing this. Lindsay Dougherty is a prominent disco clam researcher, and she's been exploring the way this clam makes light. Researchers in the 90s found that the clam's light display doesn't work in the same way that other light-producing sea creatures do. So it's not bioluminescence. It's a chemical reaction. Bioluminescence is a chemical reaction that produces light, but it's not that. Instead, it's a sophisticated reflector system called silica nanospheres.
So it's not producing the light at all? It's reflecting?
No. Silica nanosphere. Silica is extremely refractory, which means it's very good at reflecting, I think. And then nanospheres means little spheres. So Lindsay says she compares these little nanospheres to tiny disco balls.
Oh my goodness. It's a disco ball through and through.
It's a
disco ball made of disco balls.
Yeah.
It's the spirit of disco.
I'm going to say Lindsay because I don't know if her last name is pronounced Dougherty or Doherty.
It's probably Doherty. I've seen. I had a coach in middle school with that last name as Doherty.
I've literally heard it both ways. Like the word dough, E-R-T-Y. I've heard it Dougherty and Doherty. So Lindsay found that their mantles are made of two different types of tissue. The silica lip reflects light, while the other side of the mantle absorbs light, making the silica appear brighter. This allows them to reflect ambient light that makes its way down to the ocean floor. It's less useful at night or in the pitch dark. However, it's much brighter during the day. Bioluminescence usually can't be seen during the day, but this can. Researchers are looking at how they use this ability. It seems clear that they use it to ward off predators. In lab tests, when they're startled by fake predators, the clam speeds up the reflective flashing. The mantis shrimp are clearly very bothered by this flashing display, and in addition to the stupor it puts them in, they've also been seen like cleaning their mouth parts in response. So Lindsay was talking about how like they're not extreme, like mantis shrimp are not picky eaters, but for some reason when they come across this, they're bothered. They don't like it. They maybe are even disgusted by it because they clean their mouths after attacking. So they are not happy with the flashing. So the clams have also been observed flashing faster when given food. So one theory is that maybe they use it to attract prey, even though that we know them to eat phytoplankton. Maybe they also use it to attract an occasional prey species. So they can't see their own flashing. You talked about their eyes or their kind of basic eyes, but they can't actually see the flashing patterns and displays that they produce. So it's probably not meant to communicate with one another. So for right now, it looks like it's just used for warding off enemies. I wonder if it's like specifically tailored
to the mantis
shrimp because they have very, very unique eyes. Go listen to that episode, but like they see colors we don't see. They see light spectrums we don't see.
They have trinocular vision. That their eye structure is what inspired the logo for this show. 3 sections with a pupil in each section. Yeah. So they have some of the most advanced eyes on Earth. So I guess if you like give them a strobe effect, they kind of shut down. But then what does the clam do that forever? Because eventually they have to stop the show, and the mantis shrimp is still sitting right in front of them.
Well, clams can bury themselves and swim away.
Well, only certain what they're called file shells can move by closing their valves
True.
like that. But this
Maybe
is
the
one.
mantis shrimp leaves out of pure disgust.
It's like, oh yeah, that's sulfur over there in those tentacles. I don't want a part of it.
Yeah.
That's like,
But yeah, the fact that it can't see its own like annoying flashing reminds me of the fact that when I'm on PS4 with Brian and we're playing games and I'm sitting in my really annoying squeaky chair, but my headphones are on, so he can hear it over the microphone, but I can't hear it.
You're blind
So
to it.
I'm basically a disco Clam in that regard.
Yeah, maybe this Disco Clam is like J.J. Abrams. It just puts a lot of flashing lights and can't see it himself.
This is a normal movie. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
It's like, yeah, you know how to increase the tension or confusion in any scene. Just all of the lights are defective all the time.
Or the camera lens is.
Oh yeah,
The camera
or
lens
the
has
camera's
like water
pointed.
spots on
Yeah,
it.
the camera's pointed directly at any light source, and it's always as bright as the sun. Just lens flares and electric light flashes, and that's basically the entire movie. That's what that's all the director of photography needs to do. He's got two jobs, and that's flick the light switch and also aim the camera directly at the sun.
Everyone knows that in Star Trek, whenever any part of the ship is hit, all the electrical system is just toast. Because lights flash and it sparks and just goes awry.
Yeah, but you remember in the first part of the Force Awakens, all of the stormtroopers are landing in a perfectly fine ship, and all of the lights are flashing. Like,
That's true.
like yeah, give all your stormtroopers a minor epileptic seizure just before starting their kill brigade.
Well, it's because power is diverting to the shields and stuff. Because that's how power works, right?
Yeah. You only have about like what 6 pounds of power, and you can either put it all into the engines or you can put it into the lights, and sometimes the engines just need more love than the lights do.
I think there's some rhyme and reason to that, like scheduled blackouts on like power grids. That's what they're for. They
Yeah, but scheduled blackouts on power grids happen because those power grids are 30 years older than they should be. Not because the First Order has risen out of the ashes of the Empire after the absence of Luke Skywalker.
Well, there's like logic to, we'll turn off this thing to conserve power so we have more for the shields or whatever, or the blasters. But like in Star Trek, the shields get stronger if they stop like flushing the toilets or something. So I don't know.
Just put more power in the ship. Anyway. This is an interesting tangent, but for you out there,
Yeah.
So that was the Disco Clam. That's the electric fire clam, the lightning file shell, the flamboyant bivalve, Tony Mollusco. So for you out there in Podcastia, have a stiff upper lip, take a step out of your shell. And don't be afraid to offend and dazzle your enemies like Tony Mollusco, the electric eye-flashing fire shell here in Life, Death, and Taxonomy.
Hey, LD2 listeners, do you have an animal suggestion for our next episode? We usually try to find a place to put suggested interesting animals on our list. If you know of a creature with an amazing ability, let us know by emailing ldtaxonomy@gmail.com or connecting with us on Twitter or Facebook at ldtaxonomy. Thanks for listening and engaging.
Life, Death, and Taxonomy is my favorite in the world podcast.